when it comes to Islam and Christianity, I will say that in as much as they came from the same root
Hold
or
on
from the
just
same
a bit,
tree.
Luchavelele. Just a
Yes.
bit. I see that we are live. Let
Okay.
me reintroduce the topic on YouTube, and then you can proceed. Welcome,
Sure.
YouTube, to our channel. Today we are talking about whether Christians and Muslims worship the same God. And to address that, we will handle three subtopics, which include similar myths, afterlife, the Trinity. We look at either the differences or similarities between them. And as we look at each subtopic, we are going to give our perspective as skeptics and atheists on either of them, what is the truthfulness of those components. So that is the criteria for our discussion. We have decided to introduce the topic first. Members are giving their contribution on what are the basic ideas behind a God in Islam and Christianity. And then they'll give just their general position. Do they think that this is the same God, or do they think it's not? Before getting into the details, because we'll get into the details for the subtopics. But at this moment, we are describing how Islam and Christianity perceive God. Luchaveleli was speaking. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. I would like to say that in as much as Islam and Christianity, they all came from the same root, that is Judaism. We had some chronological order. We had Judaism and then Christianity, and then Islam came after Christianity. However, my stance is that I still am for the point of view that they're not really the same gods, in as much as despite the fact that they all came from the same mother religion, that is Judaism. Now, when it comes to Allah, what the word Allah means, in Arabic, it means, it's Al-Ilah. It means like the one God. It's a title. It's not really a name. It's a title or a designation. So it means like the one true God, or the God, if depending on who actually uses it. Now, when it comes to Islam, they view Allah, their God, slightly different from Christianity. I think that's because consequentially it's because of the theological beliefs, or the difference in theology, because essentially they're not the same religion. So you wouldn't expect them to have the same deities, in as much as they are related or they came from the same mother religion. So number one, when it comes to whether it's monotheism or polytheism, in Islam there's a word known as tawhid. So it means that it's absolute monotheism. So that means Allah is actually one, he's indivisible, and he doesn't have any partners or equals. So when it comes to this case, the idea of Trinity goes out the window, because just as it says, he doesn't have any partners, he doesn't have equals, and he's not multiple, he's just one. So anyone who believes that God has a son, or he has many, it's close to blasphemy in Islam. It's actually one of the gravest sin. It's like it's unacceptable. So that's one major difference I was able to note. Now the second one, it's actually about how he is revealed. Islam states that Allah is actually revealed through the Quran, which was delivered to Muhammad, the prophet or the founder of Islam. Now, when it comes to Christianity, the story of God and everything, it is actually it actually manifested through Jesus. Now they say that Jesus was the Son of God and all that. Now that's now Christianity takes a very different trajectory. Now the third bit, when it comes to this Jesus person himself, or a prophet, Islam treats him like a prophet, like he was just any other mortal human being. Similar to Judaism, which apparently it was actually the original Abrahamic faith. Now Judaism actually treats Jesus as just a false prophet. He was a blasphemer or something of the sort. Now it gets funny because the issue of divinity, of Jesus's divinity, actually stems from Christianity. It's actually, of all the three major religions, three Abrahamic religion, it's only Christianity that claims that Jesus was divinity. Jesus was the Son of God. And an interesting bit, through my research, apparently today morning at around 4 a.m., I was able to come across an interesting piece. Apparently, the early days of Christianity, not everyone actually agreed that Jesus was divinity. So it actually gets weird. There were actually some political movements and some murders. So there was a sect called Arianism. So the Arianism actually rejected the issue of Jesus being a son of God. And coincidentally enough, they're also Christians, yes, but ironically, I wouldn't say ironically, but yeah, ironically, they didn't agree that Jesus was actually divinity. He was just like any other normal person. Now, um, but why now do we have Christians saying that Jesus is, is divinity? What actually happened?
1 minute left.
Yeah. What actually happened, it was just a series of murders, political stances, political wars. So the majority actually got to wrote the book. They won that war. They killed off every other Christian that disagreed that Jesus wasn't divine. And essentially, when they set up the Council of Nicaea, they actually ended up agreeing that, you know what, we won. Jesus actually was divine. And up to this day, Christians believe that Jesus was divine, but I'm of the opinion that I wasn't really divine. So those are the major differences, and I will say that they don't really worship the same God. They're different. They're different theology, different teachings. So it's essentially different deities they are worshiping. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Where we went down a historical lane, and you were able to situate those two faiths in their historical roots. It is indeed, and both of them are Abrahamic faiths, and you've explained to us why you believe they are not the same God. Very well said. And your voice sounds nasally. Aki, umepata homa.
Yes, apparently nimepata homa. I got a cold today, so and it trained in the evening. I think it worsened. So, but tomorrow I think I'll be back on my feet. I'll do something about it.
Pole, pole. Now these are the challenges of your trade as a doctor.
That's true.
Yeah. Sawa, thank you so much for that background and for emphasizing that component of strict monotheism in Islam. It's like they're obsessed about it. Aya. Next is Black Messiah. Karibu.
Hello. Okay, I said I'm going to be a listener, but I have a pregnant point. Let me say. So the question was Christian understanding of God and Muslim understanding of God. So what I believe is that there are similarities and differences. So I will start with the similarities. For me, what I know is that they both believe in one God. The Christian believe in one God, and the Muslim believe in one God. They believe God is the creator. They all believe that God is all powerful. They believe that God is all knowing, and they believe that God is a massive God. So what about the differences? So the differences, I'm going to talk about the three differences. Nature of God, Jesus, and the scripture. And the last one, I will talk about the heaven. So let me start with the nature of God. With Christians, they believe that God is a Trinity. It's God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, and God the Son. Yeah. But in Islam, they believe in God, in one God. God is Allah. What about Jesus? In Christianity, we believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But in the Muslims, they believe that Jesus was a prophet, and he was not divine. What about the scripture? You know, with the Christians, we believe in the Bible, the Old and the New Testament. But with the Muslims, they believe in the Quran. And there's something a lot about the hadiths of the saying of the Muhammad. They believe the Quran and the hadiths, the saying of the Quran. So the last one about the heaven, you know, in a Christian, you believe that in heaven, they believe that, not we believe, they believe that in heaven, there's milk and honey. But with the Muslims, they believe that in heaven, there will be 72 virgins. They were promised 72 virgins. Yeah, that's what I believe. That's what I know.
Wonderful. Thank you for that contribution. In fact, it's like you've summarized the entire discussion. But in your view, Black Messiah, they worship different gods, right?
Yeah, they don't worship the same God. They worship different gods.
All right. Okay. So far we have 2 for the idea that they are different gods, while 2, Chilwave and Morioki, believe it is the same God. Let's see how we'll continue to tally as we proceed. Luchaveledi, you had raised your hand immediately when Black Messiah spoke. Is it in response to something he said?
It's actually a second edition. I was actually forced to split my take. Yeah.
Okay. If it's a second edition, wait for the others to speak, then we'll come to you. Great. I see ex-Pastor Sano's hand is up. Go ahead.
Audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. We are talking about them different, whether they worship the same God. To me, they worship the same God, Yahweh. Only that one is called Yahweh, the other is called Yara, but are the same God. So when we look, they both believe in Abrahamic God. They believe in Abraham and Isaac and Ismail. They both believe in that. And they believe the God who are with those people is the same God. The only difference is the method of worship. Some they think that same God, he needs this specific ritual, while the other group believe in a different ritual from the other group. But they both worship the same God. Is only that the way of worship is totally different. And when they are different, both groups cannot please the same God at the same time. Either one group will please that God, or none of them will be able to please that God, but they are focusing on the same God. Yeah, that is what I can say.
All right. So according to ex-Pastor Stano, it is just how they worship the God that differs, but it is the same one. Before Luchaveleli speaks, because he has just spoken, let me also give my contribution on this. We are answering the question, what is the general understanding of God in Islam versus Christianity? On top of what you all said, I think Chilwave, Luchaveleli, and Clinton were spot on when they were giving their take. What I can add is that for Islam, there is an emphasis on, yes, what you said, monotheism, and an emphasis on the perfection of God, his perfection and his power. They don't want to portray God as weak, as someone who changes his mind, as somebody who regrets his actions. No, he is perfect. He's absolutely flawless. That is the understanding of Islam. Additionally, they also believe in the omni-God, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-present. In Christianity, the omni version is omni omniscient, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving in Christianity. But in Islam, the concept of love is not really emphasized. They focus more on the power of God. In fact, if you look at the history of Islam or how it began, it was because Muhammad observed a lot of idolatry, a lot of worship of many gods around him. And when he got the revelation, because it is a revelation that he received from Allah through Angel Gabriel, he used to go to a certain cave and Angel Gabriel would appear. So when Angel Gabriel appeared, he gave him the word of the Lord, the message from God. And in fact, initially he had asked Muhammad to read, but Muhammad couldn't read, and he kept telling Angel Gabriel, I can't, until he miraculously was able to read. And the message of God was revealed to him. The message was that God is all-powerful, God is one. There shall be no worshiping of any other God apart from him. And to that extent, Muslims are obsessed about never drawing Prophet Muhammad or never drawing Allah himself, because the concept of idolatry comes from trying to replicate the image of God. That's why they forbid you from drawing cartoons or anything or depicting God in any way, shape, or form, because Muhammad instructed them to do so. So that aspect of perfection of God and power of God is really crucial. I had to emphasize that. They believe in angels, they believe in jinn, they believe in prophets. It's like most of the characters in the Old Testament are transformed to be called prophets, even when they were just characters, they were not prophets per se. So they really believe in prophets, and they claim that Muhammad is the last prophet. After Jesus came Muhammad, and anybody else after him is a charlatan. He has the final revelation from God. That is Islam. For Christianity, the focus, yes, it's on an omni-God, as I said, all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving. That component of having a relationship with humanity is really emphasized in Christianity. God being love, God creating us because he wanted to have a relationship with us, with human beings. And later, when the relationship was fractured, he sent his begotten son, Jesus, to mend that relationship. So the aspect of relationship, the aspect of salvation is really emphasized in Christianity. Salvation and grace. Grace is undeserved favor. You as sinners deserve to die, but God gave his son as an atonement for your sins, so you won't die because of that concept of grace. It's undeserved favor. There's also the aspect of humility. In Christianity, there's the aspect of humility that is emphasized, but that is not on God per se, but the Son of God. Yeah, the Son of God was a humble servant who rode a donkey, who lived a very simple life. That's the emphasis. He's not a conquering king in this life. He's a conquering king in the next one. Yeah, of course, there are many other commonalities. So given that description in my book, it's not very clear-cut. To me, it's not very clear-cut whether they worship the same gods or different gods. But if I was pushed to a corner, I would have to say that they worship different gods, given that understanding, given the Trinity, the concept of the Trinity, given how they perceive their God to be, I think these are different gods. Of course, as skeptics, we know these are just characters they created, but those characters, are they the same characters in my book? They are not. Yes, there might be reasons to say they are, but just from that description, that emphasis that I've given, I think they are different if I was pushed to a corner. Yeah, that's my take. Luchaveleli, you can go.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Dorcas. Also, I think just as I said, I had to split my take on it. Um, Now, I was also supposed to talk about the relationship between the believer of that particular religion and the God they worship. Now, when it comes to those two religions, you will realize that their relationship is sort of different. When it comes to Christianity, it's more intimate, like it's like a father to a child. They even refer to God as father, something you will never come across when you flip the pages of Quran. No one refers to Allah as father. Allah is no one's father. He doesn't have any kids. So he's sort of like a master. So it's a relationship of a master and a servant, or a master and a slave. So the believers are actually taught to obey. So it's not as intimate as Christianity, as you call your God father and everything like that. So it's sort of different, but it makes sense. When you want to introduce a son somewhere, like Jesus, you have to make everything relatable. So you refer to God as Father. So it kind of makes sense why that is. Now, also when it comes to salvation, now when it comes to Christianity believe that salvation comes through having faith in Christ and by grace, right? Now, in Islam, it's by the good deeds or works and mercy, because they say Allah is merciful. So there's nothing like having faith and everything like as similar as Christianity. Now, when you also take Quran, for those who can access the Quran, and you can also download the Quran anyway. It's not a must you have a hard copy, and then you try and compare the story of creation. You will notice some slight differences. When it comes to Christianity, God never created any genies or any jinns. We only have angels and humans, right? And other creations, which jinns are not part of it. Now, when it comes to Islam, when you read their creation story, in as much as it's similar, they have Adam, they call him Adam, and Eve, they call Hawa. Eve is Hawa. But there's also some slight difference. For example, despite making other creation, there is also creation of jinns, which preceded the creation of mankind. Now, in as much as man, in both accounts, they were created, Allah or God created man from dust or clay. Now, jinns, they were created from smokeless fire. They describe it as smokeless fire. And that's one major difference. So I still don't understand why someone would say that they worship the same gods, because according to me, those are two different beings. You can't say that in one religion you create jinns, and in Christianity we don't have that. And one will say that they are same. They are not the same. But I would understand why they had to introduce the aspect of jinns, because even when you study the civilization of pre-Islamic periods, jinns were actually part of their folklore. It had nothing to do with Islam. Islam never introduced jinns to the folks in Saudi Arabia. They actually had jinn story as part of their folklore that predated Islam, predated even Muhammad. Even before Muhammad was born, those guys believed in jinns. So when Muhammad brought to them Islam, it was actually smart of him. He had to incorporate part of their culture inside that new religion, and that's what usually happens. That's the reason why a European will try and portray a white Caucasian Jesus, because they actually had to own it, and then they inject some of their culture in the religion itself. So that's how we ended up having jinns in the Quran, in as much as it had nothing to do with Islam. It was actually a folklore of the pre-Islamic folks. So that's another difference. I will say that I was actually able to note. Now, for those who say that they actually worship the same
1
God,
minute.
okay. For those who say that they actually worship the same God, I try and look at it like it's like a defensive mechanism against atheism. It's like they try and force some sort of syncretism. For instance, many of us have actually had people say that when they want to judge you, they say that, you know what, better your grandfathers, in as much as they never worshiped God, but they believed in some God. So according to them, they still try and force the idea that it's still the monotheistic God. And I usually tell them, even my ancestors, they never worshipped the same God you guys are worshiping. They had different gods. But they will try and, they will try and make them up, and then to confuse you guys, to tell you that it's the same God. Like, better your ancestors, they won't go to hell because they had an idea of God. It's not Yahweh, it's their own God. So the same kind of move will be pulled by both Christians and Muslims, that they worship the same God. But we know, we've read those two scriptures, they're not the same gods. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Fantastic. Yes, there's that element of Muslims and Christians who have that unitary view of God, trying to make it seem as though it is the same, so that the atheist can look like they're lost, like they're the ones who are not seeing the light. These other people have seen the light, and they're dealing with the same God. Thank you for bringing out those very two important differences. Now, before Chilwave and Morioki speak, I would like to steer us into the second aspect, or actually, technically, it's the first subtopic, but we were already responding to a certain question, so we'll just call it the second subtopic, which is similar myths. What are some similar myths among the two religions, between the two religions? And does this mean that it's the same God? Is that enough to conclude that it is the same God? And generally, yeah, don't give your take on you as a skeptic, but what you'd interpret a myth as. That one you'll give it later. Let's just start with the similar myths between Islam and Christianity, and whether that is evidence for them worshipping the same God. And as a hint, I can suggest the Noah story, Noah's Ark, or the global flood. It's common in both Islam and Christianity. Adam and Eve, they are common, but the details differ slightly. We also have Abraham and Moses, right? So anybody can pick any of those and tell us what the similarities are, and whether this is an indication that they are worshipping the same God. So Chilwell was the next one in line. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. So I was feeling a bit sleepy, so if you guys don't mind, I just wanted to share my points before I leave. So I just wanted to share the prompt which I had seen on ChatGPT when I asked it, do Christians and Muslims worship the same God? And the response was, this is a complex question that blends theology, philosophy, and politics. The answer depends on how you define same God, whether you're asking about historical origin, conceptual overlap, or theological compatibility. Here's a breakdown of each dimension. Historical and linguistic view. Yes, they do. From a historical and linguistic perspective, Christians, Muslims, and Jews all trace their worship to the God of Abraham. This is why these religions are called the Abrahamic faiths. Arab-speaking Christians also call God Allah, just like Muslims. Islam views itself as restoring the original monotheism of Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Muslims believe in the God of Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, though they reject the Christian view that of Jesus as divine. Conclusion: from this angle, yes, they worship the same God in origin and name. 2. Philosophical and theological view. It depends. Here, the differences become sharper. Similarities, monotheism, all believe in one all-powerful, all-knowing, and merciful God. Creator God. God is the creator and sustainer of the universe. Revelation. God sends prophets to reveal his will. Key differences. The Trinity. Uh, yeah, you all know that. Jesus' nature. Christians see Jesus as divine. Islam views him as a prophet, respectfully but fully. God's knowability and nature. In Islam, God is absolutely transcendent, cannot become united with God or embody him. Christians, especially in the doctrine of incarnation, allows for God to enter human history in the form of Jesus. In the form of Jesus. Conclusion. The concepts of God diverge significantly, especially around Jesus and the Trinity. So some theologians say no, they do not worship the same God. 3. Practical and interfaith view, often treated as a yes. In interfaith dialogue, it's common to say Christians and Muslims worship the same God as a basis for mutual respect and peace. Even Pope Francis and some Islamic scholars affirm the commonalities, stressing shared moral values and monotheism. Conclusion. For the sake of peaceful coexistence and mutual understanding, many religious leaders affirm that they worship the same God. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Chat GPT never gives you direct answers, but okay, that was an interesting breakdown. And it even considered interfaith dialogue. For me, that is so inconsequential. You know, those are the people who just want to placate each other. I think the other two, theology and historical, those ones are more in line with the topic. So thank you for that contribution. Next is Morioki.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. I remember when I was young,
Morioki, you're breaking off.
being told in school that
Morioki, you're
just one
breaking off.
God with different things.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
Okay.
am I clear? I'm clear.
Yes, that's better.
Yeah. Yes, I remember being told, especially in primary school, that it's all one God with different names. I think like somebody said, I think Eugene said that just to make us more religious. We're told it's the same God. We all worship the same God. In fact, all religions have the same God with different names. I remember that. Yeah. Just make us more believers, I think. Thanks.
Aha. The differences are there indeed. Thank you, Morioki. Next is Luchaveleli.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. Yes, I would like to say that, yes, in as much as we have differences, we do have some similarities, but I still maintain my standpoint. There are two different gods, two different theologies, two different beliefs, in as much as we call them Abrahamic religion. Now, just a response on the prompt that Chilwe was good enough to share. There was a point he said that the fact that it's an Abrahamic religion, so it makes them have the same God. I object that point. It's not really the same. Just the same way we have the Baha'i faith. It's again part of the Abrahamic religion. We actually have four Abrahamic religion: Islam, Christianity, Judaism, and Baha'ism. So if we all work like that, as well say that Baha'i faith is just as good as, I mean, or it's just as similar as Christianity and Islam, but they're not. The fact we call them Abrahamic faith because they all stem from Judaism. Judaism was the founder religion. Abraham was actually a Jew. Yeah, he practiced Judaism. He actually started all that. it's because of him we have things known as Abrahamic faith, because yes, he was the founder of the Abrahamic faith as a Jew. Yeah, a Jew is a race, Judaism is the religion. Now, um, now, when we go with the chronological order, we had the spin-offs coming about. We had Christianity, which spun off from Judaism. Then we had Islam, which spun off years later after Christianity. And then the most recent child, we can call it an infant. It's actually Baha'i, the Baha'i faith. Now, the fact, by knowing this, I wouldn't say it's actually correct to say that they actually all worship the same God. They actually, yes, they are all Abrahamic religion, but those are four different theologies, four different belief systems, and they actually have different sects inside them. So I wouldn't really say that again it's the same God. Now, when it comes to the similarities, yes, we do have some similarities, because it only makes sense. If something made an offshoot of another, if something is a product of another, yes, we will have some similarity. Just the same way that all of us, or you as a person, you're similar to your parent. But the fact that you're similar, it doesn't say that you are the same or you're exactly as your parent. So we can use that analogy when it comes to Christianity and Islam and even Judaism. But I will limit myself to Christianity and Islam. Now, Christianity and Islam, you can think of them like siblings. Like you have your siblings, you have your sister, you have your brother. You can even be twins anyway. But the fact that you have your siblings, it doesn't really mean that you are exactly as your sibling. You're actually different. You're actually different. So we can look at Judaism as the father or the mother, and then Christianity and Islam as the children of that big parent or anything. So again, I wouldn't say that they worship the same God, but they have similar beliefs when it comes to what children had shared later on, where he said that sometimes when it comes to their code of conduct, what they teach, what they consider as moral, there is actually similarity. And funny enough, it's not just limited to Islam and Christianity. You will also find some similarity when it comes to their code of conduct with some other religion as well, but it doesn't say that they are similar. Now, we have the story of creation. Again, I will say creation is not similar. We have two different creation. Now, when it comes to Christianity, we all know that Christianity has two different accounts. And you will ask yourself, why do we have two different accounts of creation in the same book? So it doesn't make sense. Now, Islam has one account. Again, but it's not identical to Christianity. In as much as they have Adam, yes, they have Eve, they actually tackle the original sin. Number one, they don't have something as the original sin. In Islam, you don't inherit your sins. You don't inherit the original sin, the one which Adam and Hawa actually sinned. Now, when you're born in Islam, they don't say that you have those sins that you need salvation, you need some Jesus in your life. Not really. It's only Christianity that tells you that you actually inherited Adam's sin and Eve's sin. So that kind of teaching, you will only find it in Christianity, not in Islam. Islam, it's all about, in as much as Adam and Eve actually fell to temptation, because the jinn or Satan actually, and that's another major difference that I'm going to talk about. They were actually forgiven. But as a punishment, they were actually sent to the world. Now they were chased away from Jannah or Garden of Eden. They were chased to the world. Now they were the lesson was to teach themselves how to persevere, to struggle, because funny enough, I don't understand why religion glorifies struggling. They look at it as something cute, it's something that strengthens you and all that bullshit. But yes, I actually get that point where they're coming from. Now, when it comes to the adversary or Satan himself, Christianity actually views Satan as a former angel or a fallen angel. He was somehow God's creation, but fell and then got punished, became a serpent. Now, Islam takes it slightly different. I had actually talked about, we had humans in Islam, we had jinns, and we had angels. Now, Shaitan or Iblis, that is Satan in Islam, is actually not a fallen angel. It's a different being. It's a jinn. It's a genie. For those who don't know what genie in short. So Shaitan. So, and jinns actually have free will, just like humans. They are allowed to be religious or not. Funny enough, as I was reading, I was actually thinking of the point that we actually have some atheist jinns in the Quran anyway, because they have free will. So they were not forced to bow down and obey and worship like the angels in Christianity. when someone tells me about heaven, I picture like it's an endless Sunday worship. It's boring. Like you worship forever, praise and worship forever for a million years, even more than a million years, which is boring. Now in Islam, the jinns actually have free will. There are those who will worship Allah. There are those who don't, and they won't be actually killed for that. They have free will. So perhaps maybe some of them think we as atheists are also jinns. Who knows? No one knows. Apart from that difference, also jinns actually die. They're not immortal, in as much as they live longer than humans. That story of jinn, we don't have it in Christianity. So I still insist that in as much as we have similarities, they are not actually the same gods the believers actually worship and belief system. It's actually different. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you delved deep into the creation myths, and you showed us the difference between them. So that's great. I think I'll also give my take on the myths before we interpret them generally as skeptics. So, as Luchaveleli said, they are Abrahamic faiths, so they have Abraham in common. Judaism, Baha'i, Islam, and Christianity. They have the character of Abraham and Isaac. However, there are some slight differences. In Islam, as we said before, the emphasis is on absolute monotheism. So, the character of Abraham in Islam is called who? Ibrahim, I think. Ibrahim, yeah. That character, at some point, he observes people worshiping idols in a certain village, and he goes and fights them. As he fights them, those people decide to burn him down. But Allah intervenes, like the powerful character that he is. He cools down the fire, and Ibrahim, emerges unscathed. So that angle is not there in Christianity. In Christianity, we are just told that Abraham wanted children. He couldn't get them with his wife, but he had a child with his servant, Hagar, and got a son, the son Ishmael. In Islam, I know I'm jumping from one faith to the other. In Islam, Ishmael is perceived to be their ancestor. He's the one who eventually leads to the emergence of Muhammad. So even though Ishmael was an illegitimate child, he was the first child of Ibrahim in the Quran, and he created that tree, that ancestral tree for Muhammad and their faith. But in Christianity, we just know the story where he wanted to have a legitimate son. Eventually, he got one, and God promised that he'll have as many ancestors, not ancestors, but descendants, as the stars in the sky. And then we are told of the story of Isaac and how God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, and Abraham obeyed. Then God intervened and stopped it. So in Islam, there's also that aspect. They acknowledge the killing of a son of Abraham, but it's not Isaac. Isaac is called Ishak in Arabic. It's not Ishak who is supposed to be sacrificed, it's Ishmael that is sacrificed in Islam. So there's a slight difference, and there's an addition of that aspect of idolatry in Islam. As we said, they're really keen on monotheism. In Noah's flood, the two stories are somewhat similar, but again, there are some subtle differences which mirror the theological biases of each faith. So with Noah's flood, you remember God told them God told Noah to build an ark, He gave him the dimensions, and then he flooded the earth, and all the things, all the creatures that were in the ark were saved, but the ones that were not were destroyed. But then in Christianity, God regretted destroying mankind this way, and he promised he will never do it again. That's why he sent a rainbow. That was the first covenant. That is in Christianity. So in Christianity here, the element of God portrayed in that narrative is one of fallibility. He's a fallible creature. God regretted his action. But in Islam, there is no such aspect as regret. As we said, they want their God to be all powerful. So there's no way God can regret any action in Islam. That is a difference in that myth. Then there's the myth of Adam and Eve. That's the last one I will highlight. Apart from what Luceveleli brought out, I would also like to emphasize the aspect of work of the curses that fell upon humans after they disobeyed God. Yes, they both disobeyed God in Islam and Christianity. But in Christianity, the consequence of disobeying God is that the woman will experience pain during childbirth and the man will have to toil for his labor. In Islam, childbirth is perceived to be a blessing, according to some hadiths Muhammad gave on how a woman is divinely ordained to reproduce. So it isn't perceived to be a curse. Even work is not perceived to be a curse. So there's that distinction. They wanted to sanitize the image of God, so to speak, by the Muslims, that is, by making him not seem like he's unfair. He's a just God. So you see, when God punishes the entire race of humanity for the actions of two first humans, that's unjust. That's how Christians perceive it. But now the Muslims sanitized that aspect and said, we are not going to punish the entire race of humanity for the mistakes of two people. So they corrected that aspect. Another aspect that they corrected in that story is who is the deceiver in the story. Because in Christianity, the snake, there are debates on whether the snake is the devil, but you see, that is an interpretation that came later. If you just read the text as it is, the serpent is just a deceiver. It's not necessarily the devil, but later we interpreted it as representing the devil. The serpent became the devil. So we can just call him the devil, but know that difference. So in Christianity, the devil told Adam and Eve, if you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, your eyes will be opened, and you will see things for what they are. And then God had told them, if they eat from the tree, they will die. What happened? Their eyes were opened. The devil or the serpent's prediction was the one that came true, but God's prediction was a lie in Christianity. But in Islam, God has to be perfect. God can't go wrong. So in that respect, there's the serpent, the snake, not the snake, sorry, Satan told Adam and Eve that they will become immortal if they eat from that tree. And so that became a lie because they were not immortal. So they changed the narrative in Islam to make Satan and the deceiver, the arrogant one, while in Christianity, it seems as though Satan is the one who is looking out for the interests of Adam and Eve, and God is the one who lied. And even in Islam, they removed that aspect of God looking for Adam and Eve. They were hiding. So God was looking for them. In Islam, they're like, God is present everywhere. He's omnipresent. He doesn't need to look for people. So yes, those are some of the distinctions I needed to make. Now, before we proceed to the next subtopic, what is your perception of these myths? Besides them being an indication of whether something is, whether they worship the same God or not, what do you think of the truthfulness of these myths? Like, and how they interpreted them, how those two faiths interpreted them. What does it tell us about the truthfulness of their beliefs or just humans in general? Let's give our take on that before we proceed to the next subtopic. Great, whichever.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. I was actually able to get some insights after comparing the two myths, and I was able to find something interesting. Just as I usually say that religion actually has a function to serve the society or individuals in the society. It's not the other way around. Essentially, that's how it's supposed to be. In as much as some we see that people even lose lives because they're serving a particular religion. Now, in this context, why I'm starting with that statement, it's because I was able to find some irrefutable evidence as to, for instance, if it's a founding culture, for instance, if it's us Kenyans as a whole, I don't want to get into the tribes. Assume Kenyans, we are one ethnicity, and then we come up with the religion. So whichever beliefs or even if it's the behavior of those gods we worship, in a way, they sort of reflect our subconscious aspects or our subconscious elements. Or you can actually say that we actually create these gods after our own images, for instance. For instance, if we say that our economic activity is cattle rustling, of course, I will make up a god that loves cattle rustling, who is appeased by cattle rustling. Now, when it comes to Islam, just the same way that they had to, include jinns, those fairy tale beings in Islam, just to make it appealing to the folks in Saudi Arabia, because jinns are part of their folklore, they are part of their culture. So it actually makes sense. Now, when you go to Judaism, this issue about the Sabbath day, why they rest on the seventh day, of course, they will tell you that God rested on the seventh day because, yes, it serves them. It serves, it it ought to serve the people who actually create that religion. So of course they will inject some of their stuff inside. They will create their belief system after their own image, and that's what happens. Even when you look at, for instance, this African inland religion, you will see some element that, yeah, yes, they are creative, yes, but those guys actually injected some Africanism inside that, and you wouldn't blame them because that's how religion actually works. That's why you have a white Jesus, you have a Middle Eastern Jesus, you even have Mexican Jesus, and it's actually interesting. I will say, if not, yes, I wouldn't say beautiful, but it's interesting. When I came to that realization, I was like, oh, so it makes sense. So even the issue about neocolonization, why, for instance, a modern African Christian will tell you that, you know what, you should actually stop wearing the jeans and wear suits. That's because the white preachers wear suits. It has nothing about holiness. It's nothing about what God wants. It's the owners of those religion telling you what to do, because it's like they have a superior culture. They want to make you conform to that. So that's what I was able to get from these myths. And again, when it comes to, and also that said, there are also some aspects of that I wouldn't really say that they will easily fade. For instance, the deluge or the flood myths. The flood myths are part and parcel of this Abrahamic religion. When you go to Islam, you find the story of Nuh. He's actually called Nuh. Christianity, there is Noah. Yeah. Judaism, again, there is also Noah. So, but Judaism being we can say the original Abrahamic religion, but you will come to realize that even them, they weren't original to come up with the story of Noah and the flood myth. It actually predates even the Judaist religion. If you can remember the Sumerian myth, the Gilgamesh story, the Epoch of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is just another original version of Nu. So we had some iterations with Judaism, with Christianity, now Islam, now Baha'ism. So it's actually a regurgitation across cultures, across time of various civilizations. Like we had a preceding civilization that came up with Gilgamesh, they died off, another civilization arose, they borrowed it, they modified it a bit. So it's still happening. That's the same thing Islam and Christianity are actually doing. They took Judaism, they modified it to make it Christianity. Now Islam came later. They took Christianity, modified it, and make it appealing to their people. And who knows? Probably maybe in the next 1,000 years, you will find again people actually coming to Christianity, borrowing it, modifying it, like, and it has actually happened. If you look at these new age movements and even this story of the kind of story that Muriuki loves, this black, this story of is it Yakub, the new Islam. New Islam just did the same thing. They just went to the original Islam, took it, made it palatable to the black man, because the Christians were actually enslaving them. So it's actually happening. I will say it's a human behavior, sort of like you just modify it, repackage, make it appealing to the existing society or civilization, and make them feel nice. It becomes their culture, and they develop their identity like that. So that's what I'd say. Thank you.
Great. Yes, 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 indeed. Our myths are a reflection of our society's needs and our cultural influences. I like that aspect of the Nation of Islam co-opting what Islam practiced before and customizing it to Black people in general. Now, because Mojoki had spoken, Brian has not said a word. Allow me to jump the queue and choose him first. We are talking about our general assessment as skeptics of these two myths from these two religions. What is our general assessment of them as skeptics and AP? Go ahead, Brian.
Hey everyone, so this is an interesting set of questions, and I happen to have a book that sort of tries to explore this different set of mindsets that people have. It's tangential to religion. More importantly, the fact that religion is part of human life, it's mentioned there. So the relevant parts here are a section on how beliefs become identities. And yeah, so Luchavaleli, you mentioned something here. You ended on this idea that how religions decide to co-opt a particular society and by making it palatable to people and in order for people to develop their identities around it. And this is the very idea. So when something becomes a part of your identity and someone else criticizes it, it feels like a personal affront. Right. So that's the one thing. So it feels like someone insulting your family or stomping on your country's flag or something like that. It just feels visceral. And the reaction could be something like, oh, so you're one of those people. Someone who's now being accused of being the atheist or whatever, being the outsider, saying, okay, you're one of those people who say X or Y, right? So, and this is the reaction you typically expect. And the names and labels that come with the religion are built on top of family stories, family history. So it's a very identity laden. When someone decides to change a religion, it's almost like they're changing families in a way, like they're moving away from the family that they were born with to a family that is chosen somehow. So there's so many identity transforming things. And one of the things that keep outside of the identity formation, one of the things that keeps people on, or rather that now helps to spread this idea is the fact that that nothing other than humans talking to each other is what causes the change in identity. Right? These are all just memes. So usually there's a central source of people that frequently going to this one place and then listening to whoever is standing there in the right, dressed in the right protocol, whatever. HTTPS. This is decided that that's like the protocol of deciding, okay, this person has worn the right hat and they've worn the right robe and they're holding the right carved stick or whatever. And that's how they get to speak. Or that's how they get to be the one to spread the meme of the week, or to continue spreading the meme that has been that's not being reinforced in that region. So in this way, we basically just see which one is more lasting, right? So we'd see Christianity frequently just being like a very rapid form of change and transformation and disruption of whatever society is going through at that particular point. So it's like Christianity feels like a rapid response team for like control over population, pretty much, because every time something needs to be sent from whoever is in power decides that, okay, they're going to go and send that message in a church, or that will send the message to everyone in the country very quickly somehow. It's because this is like how much is there, right? When 99% of the country are 99 point whatever percent in the country are religious, you'd expect there's like some fraction of them which anything that is said from certain places is just going to spread as fast as possible, faster than a news article would do it. So there's like, it's very strange just observing this. So there's then I guess to like round it up, think of the idea of this is a meme, a machine for spreading memes, and it's very efficient. It's ancient. So, and the people are like feel embattled when they get criticized about questions about their identity. They feel proud whenever they either feel like they've got their message across, which might be, I don't know, criticizing someone appropriately, showing the right amount of righteous anger, or whatever, some kind of affront to their religion or something. And it turns out to be what people actually choose to do, to think about the world and like place themselves in a particular area or a particular part of the society and understand who they are. Only it's literally just by accepting memes and deciding this is the thing that they're going to spread. Yeah, and that's all I have to say.
Interesting metaphor there. These myths are memes, and they form a central part of people's identity. Yes, yes, indeed. Next is Murioki.
Thanks, Dr. I think what I'll say just shows how man-made all this is. This proves how man-made God is, how man-made those books are. These religious books, they're all man-made. Like the rainbow, scientists can explain the rainbow because the rainbow is just the colors of the sun being split up. Even at times when it rains, you see water having the rainbow colors. So a rainbow can be explained. So seeing a rainbow came from God, just shows it's all man-made. So thanks.
Right, indeed. This stuff is made up. This stuff is made up. Let me also give my take on myths, those two myths in general, and then we proceed to the next subtopic, which is the afterlife. So please start thinking about similarities or differences between the afterlife in Islam and Christianity, heaven and hell. the concepts of heaven and hell in Islam and Christianity. So I agree with you guys on this idea of using religion to propagate a certain agenda. I call it theological branding. People will create myths to suit their circumstances. And they will do so based on the key principles that they adhere to. As I said earlier, in Islam, the emphasis is on absolute monotheism, on God's powerfulness and his perfection. God does not make mistakes in Islam. So what they did is they co-opted biblical myths and then fixed some of the mistakes that painted God in a negative light. I give the example of Noah, where God regretted. In Islam, they removed that part. I give the example of God telling Adam and Eve an untruth in the Garden of Eden in Christianity, and the devil actually being the truth giver in Christianity. But in Islam, they twisted it around to make the devil the deceiver, because now the devil in Islam promises them immortality, and they did not get immortality after eating from the fruit. So they needed to sanitize the image of God to make him perfect and to make him infallible, one that does not regret his actions. That is what they did. They retrofitted previous myths in order to achieve this. It seems as though it started with the Jews in Judaism. They were the 101 version, and then there was the 201 version with Christianity, and then there was the 301 version of Islam. Yeah, they kept revising it in order for it to fit this mold of the God that Muhammad had envisioned. That's generally how I would put it. And on myths for both faiths, there's nothing new under the sun. As Luchaveleli said, it wasn't the Jews or the Old Testament that was the start of all of these narratives. It's like they just kept copying each other, borrowing from the cultures around them, and then revising them to suit their circumstances. So let's remember that the Israelites were ruled by the Babylonians, and they wanted to distinguish themselves from their rulers. They wanted to make the kind of God they worship to be unique and powerful, because their rulers believed in polytheistic gods. In fact, their gods were very capricious, unpredictable. They would fight among each other. There was in Egypt, there's another god that ejaculated the earth. He masturbated and ejaculated and created the earth from it. So that was an Egyptian myth. Their gods, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Mesopotamians, the Babylonians, they believed in gods that had many mistakes. They would reproduce with each other, and they were one-track minded, like they would focus on one superpower, those gods. So the Israelites needed to distinguish themselves from these other cultures, and that's why they invented a monotheistic God, one that is self-contained, all-knowing, all-present, etc. Yeah, but they couldn't run away from their cultures because they still plucked some things here and there from those cultures. For instance, the aspect of a serpent. A serpent is a common symbol in myths, in religious myths around that time or before Judaism came into the picture. And the serpent in those stories was perceived as something cunning. But here he becomes a deceiver among the Israelites. So they still borrow, as Luchaveleli said, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is still a global flood where the hero is told to build a boat where he puts a few creatures that survive the global flood. So and that one predated them many years before. So they just mimicked it. And of course, in Christianity specifically, we know of Jesus himself, the story of the resurrection or the virgin birth. Those aspects are also common in other cultures that predated Christianity. Resurrection, Mithra, and many other Greek gods, Egyptian gods. Even the aspect of a trinity was common among all those. So overall, what I would say is that we imitate what is around us, but we also try to carve out something unique based on our theological agenda. So that is what we see with Islam and Christianity. Now, let's proceed to the next subtopic, which is heaven and hell, the afterlife. What are the differences or similarities between Islam's and Christianity's understanding of the afterlife? And we can even throw in our perspective there so that we save on time. Our perspective as skeptics. Yes, go ahead, Luchaveleli.
Yeah, I'd first like to start with the similarities. Yeah, so the similarities is, yes, both religion believe in life after death. Like after you die, there is a place you go to. So, and both religion also, number two, both religion also believe in the judgment day. It's like a final day of judgment where all souls will be held or are held, usually held accountable. Now, when it comes to heaven and hell, both again believe in the concept of heaven and hell, those two religions. So paradise or heaven and hell, a place of suffering. Now again, they both believe in resurrection, and that is bodily resurrection, like you resurrect with a new body, some sort of like that, if you're dead. And then there's also the aspect of moral accountability, where whatever you did in this life affects affects your fate in the afterlife. And then they also have angels and books. So they both believe that angels will record the human actions, whether it's they give testimonials or whatever that means anyway. But both believes in those. Now, when it comes to the major differences I was able to find, one of the major differences is that number one, um, one, for example, that is Christianity. It has a sort of temporal state. It's like a balance, not heaven, not hell somewhere. But again, it depends on a denomination, because not all Christians actually ascribe to this sort of theology. That's mostly I find it mostly with the Catholics. They talk about purgatory. It's like a temporary place where souls are actually purified. That's what they believe. Like again, and not everyone enters purgatory. It's like those who are destined for heaven, but they are sort of impure. Case in point, aborted children. That's actually the best example I can give. Like they're innocent, but they're impure, so they go to purgatory. What usually happens in purgatory, they will tell you that it's a place of, it's suffering that sort of it's meant to purify you. Just as I earlier said, Like it's like they venerate or they glorify suffering. I don't know why anyway. But according to that school of thought, that souls are purified there, and then after purification, they are now destined for heaven. Now in Islam, it's sort of like a purgatory, but it's not purgatory. They call it pazak. It's Arabic for barrier. Yeah. But now the difference is that again, not all souls go to barzakh, but those who are, it's like I mean, in Islam, all souls will go to that temporal place. Like judgment is not immediate. In mainstream Christianity, when you die right now, excluding the Catholics, they believe that you are either going to heaven or hell. Now, in Islam, you are going to that barzakh place. That barzakh place, it's like a temporal barrier where after which your fate is now decided. You either go to heaven or hell. And Islam, it gets interesting. And how will you be judged? They actually borrowed, or I can say that I was able to find some similarities between the way Allah judges people and the way ancient Egyptian, there is a god called Anubis used to judge people. They used scales, it's like they weigh the good and the bad. Now, when it comes to how Allah judges that, if you did a bad deed that in your whole life and it was more than a good deed, the scales, the heavier weight will actually tip down, and then the lighter thing will now rise. So if your heavy or if your evil deeds are actually weighed, they are actually heavy, they will tip down, and then you will be told to go to to go to Jahannam or hell. Now, in Christianity, it's only Jesus who will judge you. So I don't know how he will judge that. But again, it is believed that through your deeds in your past life or in your life before you die. So again, I was able to note that difference. But something to take home, just as I had earlier said, you see, most of this religion, they actually borrow from a preceding religion. So it wouldn't really be a surprise if that weighing scale narrative was actually borrowed from another civilization, probably the ancient Egyptians. So that's what Allah uses to judge the souls. So if your bad deeds are heavier than your good deeds, you go to hell and all that. Now, another aspect is, what's the purpose of barzakh and what the purpose of purgatory in Christianity? So as I've said, in Islam, it's supposed to be a waiting place for all souls, as it's like a waiting bay. It's like you're waiting for a flight. Now, the flight will either take you to heaven or hell. Now, in Christianity, excluding the Catholics, when you die, depending on what you did, you will either go to heaven or hell. But it gets weirder because they again talk of judgment. So I was wondering, okay, so if I'm going to hell, if I die today and I go to hell today, what's the use of you judging me? What's the use of me waiting for judgment day? Unless I ask a theologian, or thank God we have ex-pastor Stano. I'm assuming he can be able to answer my question, because yeah, he is very much conversant with that bit of theology. Now, when it comes to things like I think I'm losing my point of thought. Okay, when it comes to issues like who the story the of how Lucifer or Iblis or Shaitan will be punished as well. In Christianity, Iblis will actually be punished with the believers that he sinned with, yeah, or the people he tempted with. Now, in Islam, it gets sort of different, because it's not like he gets punished. It's like his job is actually to punish or to torture you people who disobeyed Allah, the sinners. So there's a subtle difference. That was what I was able to note. Yeah, thank you.
Aha, so they have that element of purgatory, but of course, with Christianity, it's not all that believe in purgatory, but yeah, there's that aspect of divine judgment that we will all face after we die. Murioki, your hand was up. Umeishukisha.
Yeah, maybe I can just add. He said almost what I wanted to say, but there's this thing of the soul that our soul exists. In fact, I don't know which country it was, but they tried to capture us. So now, because they didn't, it proves the power of God. It was ridiculous. They tried to capture a soul, and of course they didn't capture it. They say you see, souls exist. So it's a joke. And also, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. The soul and the afterlife. Yeah, thanks.
Aha. Yes, there's that. Let me give my contribution quickly. We proceed to the last subtopic, which is the Trinity. Hopefully we'll finish by 1:30. On the afterlife, I think this one clearly shows you the distinctiveness of the two religions. They really don't worship the same God here because of the prerequisites to going to heaven or hell, for that matter. For you to go to heaven in Christianity, you need to confess your sins and become saved. Jesus said that no one can come to the Father except through me. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. So there's that very important distinction between the two faiths. You have to believe in Jesus and you have to be saved for you to go to heaven in Christianity. Conversely, in Islam, you have to believe in Allah, but also you have to engage in good deeds. Like you have to combine those two aspects. So the requirements are different. When it comes to how they describe their heaven in each, they're different as well. In Islam, they talk, it's called, as Luchaveleli said, it's Jannah, then Jahannam is hell in Islam. So heaven in Islam is described as this flawless place. It will have crystal clear waters, rivers of wine, and there's also this character called the Hur. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. H-O-O-R. They are women who the prophet described as being very beautiful, that their skin is transparent to the point of seeing their bones. That's scary, man. So they will become companions. They call them companions for men. In fact, I was like, damn. Even before we bring in the virgin thing, because the virgin story, the 72 virgin thing, I'm told it's in the Hadith, and there are some Muslims who are Quran only Muslims. So I won't even bring in the 72 virgin aspect. But this other one is in the Quran of the Hur. And yeah, they have transparent, their skin is so pale, it's so elegant and magnificent, and they are there to act as companions for men. Women, I'm told, them they will get, that you can get a partner, but you see now their partner is not as magnificent as the Hur. And they describe it like, to me, it's so materialistic. I wonder if they believe in the aspect of a soul, then it's so materialistic because they talk about pearls and gold, even the clothes they will wear, they'll just be full of splendor, you know.
Because you're posing,
Like
you're posing.
Oh,
I can see you
my
posing. I don't know if it's me, you're
internet.
posing. I don't know if it's me or I don't know if it's me or other. I don't know.
Okay, where did you lose me from? The way I've talked, Aki. Let me just continue because yes, I'm seeing my internet is flickering.
I think it's you, Marioki. We've been hearing you. I think it's Marioki's.
Oh,
It's me. It's
because
me.
I've been
Okay,
hearing you.
fine. It's me. Okay, fine.
oh, great. Oh, I was wondering, gosh, I was talking to myself all this time. So, yes, I'm talking about the concept of heaven, Jannah, in Islam, and it seems so childish, even like this was just a failure of imagination on Prophet Muhammad's part. He describes it, there'll be pearls, you'll wear gold, the streets will just be evergreen, they'll have crystals, diamonds. I'm like, that sounds boring. Very boring and very materialistic. Like, it just doesn't make sense. If you believe that you will lose this body, then well, why have things that would appeal to the body only? So anyway, that is heaven. The concept of heaven is slightly different from how Christians understand theirs. Of course, Christians still believe in a magnificent place which will have no pain, or there will be no weeping, no pain, no suffering in heaven, according to Christians. And there's also that aspect of milk and honey somewhere in there, and the streets of gold. And also Jesus talks about a mansion, that I will prepare a mansion. So there's also the aspect of the mansion in the Christian version. On hell, the requirements for going to hell are also different. The Muslims acknowledge that if you are an uncontacted tribe, or you have never heard of Allah's message from Muslims, but you engage in good deeds, you will go to heaven, you won't go to hell. The person who will go to hell is the one who hears the message of Allah and rejects it. You go to hell, and hell involves burning. But in Christianity, the people who will go to hell are the ones that do not get saved. Even the uncontacted tribes. That is the reason why Christians are obsessed with missionary work. They want to go to the Amazon. In fact, they were complaining, the governments of those uncontacted tribes were complaining that Christian missionaries are going there and taking diseases to those uncontacted tribes in a bid to save them from hell. Because in Christianity, there's no discretion. Just as long as you have not gotten saved, you're going to die. You're going to burn in hell. So that's what I had to bring out. And as a skeptic, of course, what I think about this is that it is still a reworking. Islam is a reworking of Christianity and Judaism. Like, it sees some of the missteps involved and it tries to fix them, like that element of the contacted tribes. But then there's also the aspect of being very male-centric. I find that Islam is really gearing its rewards in the afterlife to men. Women are some sort of afterthought in Islam. While in Christianity, it's a bit egalitarian on that front. But all of this is made up. It's a fairy tale with no evidence. It's just an indication of the cultural predispositions of those two groups. Finally, let's proceed to the last subtopic, which is the Trinity. What do the two faiths have to say about the Trinity? I know Chilwave had mentioned something, but let's also give our take. Chilwave and Clinton, they had said something about it. Let's give our take on the Trinity in these two faiths. Please don't be shy to raise your hands. How do Muslims or Christians understand the Trinity? God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Should I pick? Yes, Borioki, go ahead.
What I'll say, I think Muslims don't take Jesus the way Christians do. You know, Christians hold Jesus on a very high level, and Muslims don't do that. That's all I can say for now. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, yes. Yes, indeed, Muslims think of Jesus as a prophet, a prophet. Christians think otherwise. Yes, someone else on the Trinity. Oh, Brian says, oh yeah, and he has logged off, but this was fun. I have to go, guys. Thank you, Brian, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you in our midst. Yes, guys, please raise your hands. Trinity, that's the last topic. Hopefully we'll be done in the next 10 minutes or less. How do those two religions perceive the Trinity? Ex-Pastor Stano, you're an ex-pastor. Tell us what you think of the Trinity. If Stano is not close.
For me, Trinity, I believe, is the God is one, but it's like the power of God. He works as the power. When he is working, that is the spirit. And also in flesh, in form of human being. So when he came in there on earth, he came in form of human being. So because it's one God, having the three form, that is where we term it as a Trinity. Although Bible does not specify saying about the Trinity, but we look those three form and term them as a Trinity, even if it's not direct from the Bible. So because he has been forming in three form, either he came in spirit or in type of power, or he came in a resembling of a human beings. So the other one is the Father who is invisible. It's not a spirit, but is invisible. Or he dwell in heaven, does not come to heaven, to earth. The only God that come in earth is only in body form or in spirit form. Yeah, that is how I understand about the Trinity, although it's not in the Bible.
And Stano, what about the Muslims? What do they think about that understanding?
So according to Muslim, they understand as the polygamy.
Polytheism.
Yeah, polytheism. Because the Christians, they worship Jesus. They can also worship the spirit indirect. So that means they worship three gods instead of one God. Although according to Christian, they think they worship one God in three form. But according to understanding of Muslim, they believe Christian worship three God because God cannot be in three form according to their understanding. But according to Christian understanding, God can be in three form. But logically, it is impossible for God to have in three form. Logically, so logically Muslim are right. But because this is a matter of beliefs, we cannot use the word logic.
Yes. Logic and critical, just common sense.
To answer the question of Eugene about the hell, Christians, they don't believe when you die, you go to hell. Christians believe, all according to the Bible, believe when you die, you go to a pending. Your spirit or your soul is kept in a certain place, waiting for those people who are on earth to finish their race. Then you go together in hell or in heaven. And that is why even in the book of Revelation, our angel can open we can see a revelation opening a seal, and the holy people who are seen, the soul of holy people who are seen, and they asking God, when will be our time for you to revenge for us what we have been done in earth? But the angel come with a white robe and he cover them, telling them, wait, your brother and sister to finish their race first before we revenge for yourself. That means there is somewhere where the soul are kept waiting for the rapture or waiting for the end time, according to the Bible. But in some Christians, they can also use the parable of Jesus, where he speak about the rich and the Lazarus, where when the moment Lazarus died, he got to heaven direct, where the rich got to hell, where the rich was asking for a water. So some they may refer that parable as the moment you die, you go direct to hell or direct to heaven. But that, according to the theology, is just a parable that was illustrating what will happen in the future. Yeah, thank you.
Aha. You see, now that is the challenge with most of these religious ideologies. They can be interpreted either way. You can interpret it to mean that when you die as a Christian, you will go somewhere pending, waiting for the rapture. But then you can also interpret it based on the story of Lazarus, that it is immediate. So either camp is accurate because they're relying on the Bible. That's the confusion, which is authored by
To end on that, according to the Paul wrote, I think in the First Corinthians chapter 15, verse 51, he say, not everyone will die, but everyone will be transformed. But those who are dead will be raised first. Then we who are alive will be transformed into a new body, like I'm blinking of an eye. Then we, together with those dead who have been resurrected, will meet in heaven, according to the First Corinthians chapter 51, from verse 50 to 57, to 52. So that means, even according to Paul, he believed the dead are still waiting to be resurrected, are not in heaven nor hell.
I see. So there's that aspect of the dead coming back to life to receive judgment. Thank you, Stano. Next is Luceveleli. Remember, we are talking about the Trinity. We are discussing, this is the last subtopic of the day or of the night. We're talking about the Trinity. How do the Christians and Muslims perceive the Trinity? Luceveleli.
Thank you very much, Douglas. Actually, just a commentary on ex-Pastor Stanton. Thanks for the reply. I was actually trying to imagine since we had Homo erectus and he's been around. He has been around since. I mean, not since because he's over 2 million years. So I'm trying to imagine someone is at that place. He has been waiting for over 2 million years for a smart ape to come around and then for all of us to die, and then God can judge them, and then they tell them, you can now go to heaven or hell. That's a lot of waiting. 2 million years, it's a lot. Okay. Now, when it comes to the Holy Trinity, I start first by giving the timeline because I'm not a historian, but I like history, and so yeah, I think just as ex-Pastor Stan was saying, the Trinity theology, it's not really in the Bible, but what I understand, what the Christians did, they took hints from the Bible and then they ended up constructing their theological doctrine of that Trinity. Because when you look at John 1, verse 28, it talks about Jesus being divine. But when you read Mark, it tells you about Jesus being just a man. So you're like caught in between. Then there is a place where in John 14:16, it talks about the Holy Spirit acting personally. And then the place where Jesus got baptized, and then they say the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So that's where they latch on, and then they tell you that, you know what, it's in the Bible, but it's not. Those are just hints they were taking. But the Trinity doctrine began taking root at least 1 century CE. That's the perceived death of this individual Jesus. So now, when you move to the 2nd and 4th century CE, we started to have debates because even those Christians, those ancient Christians, they weren't really agreeing. We had a guy who brought in the doctrine called modalism, who said that God is just one person acting in different ways, but it was rejected, probably killed. Then we had a guy called Arius around 4th century CE, who rejected the idea that Jesus is divine. He said that Jesus was created, he was not eternal. This aligns with what Muslims were saying, that Jesus was just a prophet, he was just a man, like he died, and he's not really God's son. That's blasphemous. But those Christians who followed this doctrine of Arianism, they were actually purged. It was sort of a political purging. Like if there are any dissenting voices, they were dealt with because it was all about imperial power. So as I said earlier, we now ended up with something known as the Council of Nicaea, which happened at around 325 CE, many years after this Arian guy got purged. So we all had these new Christians agreeing that, you know what, Jesus is divine. Now one would ask, what would why the Muslims reject this bit? Now, the good thing about the early Christians, they were good at keeping records. Whether good or whether bad, it's out there. It's, it's historical. It's in the annals of history of Christianity. Now, the reason why Islam rejected this, they got wind of the massacres, of the Aryan massacres, that because we had some Christians who rejected the idea of Jesus not being divine, they purged. So the Muslim, when you look at the map, where we had Turkey and North Africa, they were actually sort of neighbors. So whatever went down in the Mediterranean, believe you me, the Muslims in North Africa got wind of it. So they heard about the purge, the killings of those people who were saying that Jesus is not divine. So some of them began saying that, you know what, if there was anyone who was closer to Islam but they were not Islam, it was actually those Aryans, because they were saying that Jesus was just a man, but they got killed for it. So according to the staunch Muslims, they actually say that the modern Christian, the mainstream Christianity, is actually blasphemous and it's illegitimate because it got their power through purgings. It killed the dissenting voices, and they became the only voices that say Jesus by the Trinity and all that. So that's where we are right now. Now, so one would ask, why did these massacres happen? Because it doesn't make sense a Christian killing a Christian, but it does happen because it's all about power. So it all started with the condemnation of this Arius guy who said that Jesus was not, he was not. They started by banning his writings, and then he was exiled but not executed. Now, many years after that, now the crackdown happened. So in as much as the Aryans temporarily felt safe, but they started being hunted down. After around 10 years, they were actually extinct. They were killed, all of them. So we ended up with, Christians who saying that the Trinity is the main theology. And that's where we are. So I would agree with the Muslims there that, Christians usually used some underhanded tactics, to gain control and, preach what they preach right now about the Trinity. Because you could try to imagine a world. Right now, it's hard to imagine such a world that you have a Christian domination which teaches that Jesus is not the Son of God. But I will find it interesting if we had those Aryans right now. It will be very interesting. But unfortunately, no, they got wiped, they got killed because some people thought that their views or their point of views actually made sense, and it actually helped to shape Christianity into what it is right now. So that's just a little catch up on the history bit, as much as I've taken a lot of time. But yes, it's actually fascinating to see that, you know what, it's all man politics in there. Dissenting voices get purged, and someone just wanting their belief system being the mainstream. So that's where we are right now. So there's nothing divine about it. There's nothing divine about this Jesus character, if he ever existed, and if he did, he was just a man. So the lies about him being divine or the Trinity came much, much later after his supposed death, much, much later. So that's what it's.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking us down that historical lane and talking about the idea of power, authoritarianism. You know, sometimes Christians pontificate and wear this superiority complex that as Christians, we are peaceful. Jesus was a peaceful man, and so his followers are also peaceful. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall see God. You know, they emphasize that based on what is happening today. But if you look at their history, that concept of the Trinity or any other heretical views were purged violently. So Christianity has not been a religion of peace, historically speaking. And this Trinity has been at the center of this notion. So thank you so much for pointing that out. Next is Morioki, our man of few words.
Thanks, Dorcas. Just to add on the Trinity, I remember when I was Catholic, we had to do the sign of the cross in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It was vital to do that. Like if you pray without the sign of the cross, there's a problem. So in Catholics, we really value the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. But Protestants, I think they left it. They pray without doing it. But Catholics value it a lot. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, Catholics really emphasize the triune God. Protestants also believe in the Trinity. It's just that maybe they don't ritualize it as much as the Catholics do. Since I don't see any other hands, let me give my take. We give our closing remarks. I prompt some people who have not said anything, and we call it a day. There are controversial positions on the Trinity in the Bible. It is one of the most confusing aspects of Christianity. It's very confusing when you try and preach Christianity to an uncontacted tribe, a group that has never heard of it. They get confused about this aspect of somebody being three in one, but they are one, but they are three, and it's just really, really confusing. And that's why Islam came into the picture in order to simplify this conception of God. So, according to the Christians, there are some verses that emphasize the aspect of the Trinity. Then there are some verses that contradict it. So, there's this one where Jesus said, I and the Father are one. Trinity. Another one, the Spirit descended on Jesus and God spoke. He said, this is my Father, this is my Son who I am proud of. Then there's another one. In the beginning, the Spirit of God hovered over the waters in the book of Genesis. Yeah. And then there's the other one of, so those are the ones that show the Trinity. Of course, there are many other verses that show the Trinity. I just wanted to emphasize those ones. Now, the ones that contradict the Trinity still in that same Bible include when Jesus is on the cross and he says, Father, why hast thou forsaken me? Or even before he is crucified, he says, God, if you can take this cup away from me, please do so. So if you are the same thing How can you be talking to yourself? It means you're separate entities. It is self-contradictory. Then there's also this aspect of Jesus being a child, needing to eat, needing to breastfeed, needing to do normal things, to excrete, to sleep, to do all those things. How can you be divine when you are doing these things? You know, they talk about the pain and suffering of Jesus on the cross, and I'm like, but he's an immortal creature. He's divine. He should be able to withstand any pain inflicted on him. It shouldn't be a biggie. So that's contradictory. Additionally, Jesus said that he will be seated near the Father when he was crucified, near the Father in heaven. So if you're seated near somebody, it means you're not that person. You are distinct from that person. Yeah. And then finally, there is just no mention of the Trinity in the Bible. As Lucevelelli mentioned, that story of the Nicene Creed, they are the ones that came up with that concept and said, this is the correct interpretation of the Bible, that we have a Trinity. We have three in one, but it is not explicitly mentioned in the Bible. So with Christianity, there is self-contradiction. You cannot go with a school of thought which is self-contradictory. It's illogical, in other words. With Islam, they rejected all that. They said God cannot reproduce. He cannot have a son. This concept of the Immaculate Conception, the Holy Spirit raping Mary because she got pregnant without her consent. It's just ridiculous. It's really ridiculous if you think about it. And the Muslims saw it. They were like, there's no way a God can reproduce. Of course, this was imitated from other gods that reproduce. They have kids who have superhuman capabilities. A God-man is not unique to just Judaism or Christianity. A God-man is evident in Greek mythologies, in Egyptian mythologies, and some of those other ancient civilizations. So the Muslims rejected it. Why did they reject it? Because of that self-contradictory and illogical nature of the Trinity claim. Once again, the pattern we are seeing here is Muslims are coming in and they are cleaning up the mess that is in Christianity. They're trying to make themselves more logical, so to speak, but they also have their many flaws. They also have their many challenges. Overall, overall on the entire discussion, I feel like Islam is just coming in after Christianity to make up for the mistakes that were evident in Christianity, and also to reflect their culture or the needs of the people in Muhammad's lifetime. That is what Islam is about, but it is essentially just another theological rebrand of what existed before. And were these different gods? Were they the same gods? They were different gods, different perception of the gods. Yes, they plagiarized, they copied aspects from Christianity, from Judaism, the Muslims, but they also incorporated their own unique elements into their theology. So overall, my take is it was a different God. They worshipped different gods. they just modify or they just imitate from each other where they can. That's my take. So let's hear any closing remarks on this entire discussion and your perception as an atheist on this entire discussion. Let's hear some closing remarks, and hopefully we will hear from people who have not said anything today. Let's start with Morioki.
Thanks, Dr. Just a question. Would this mean they believe it's the same God? Like in public holidays, like Madaraka Day, Jamhuri Day, they make a Muslim pray, an African pray, a Christian pray. Even this national prayer breakfast. Here even Muslims attend. Like they're showing that it's just the same God. My take. Would that mean that they believe it's the same God? Thanks.
So you're asking us a question?
Yes. Because they involve Muslims, Christians, and they all pray in Madaraka Day, Jamhuri Day. They involve almost
Dorcas,
all
can I
denominations.
say something to him?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
say something?
Tehuti.
Huh?
Yes, Tehuti.
Morioki, the reason we
Yeah.
have all those religions in those public functions is because Kenya is not a Christian country. We are a secular nation. So we allow everyone to participate. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my question was, could that show that they believe it's the same God? Yeah. Is that a sign that they say
It doesn't mean it's the same God. They just have different beliefs. It's never the same God. They're not there to praise or worship the same God. Everyone is there to do their thing.
okay?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Thank you, Tehuti. Yes, I can add to that, Morioki. It's just religious pluralism or religious tolerance, because we are a religiously diverse country. They also invite the African traditional religious adherents. They also invite that. They also invite the Hindus to come and give their prayer. Those ones have a very distinctly different gods. But even if we just concentrate on Muslims and Christians, they worship different gods. It's just
It's all about
religious tolerance.
diversity. It's diversity,
Okay, sir.
making
Okay, thanks.
everyone feel included in the national celebrations.
So that would explain why Mumia went. I don't know if he prayed an atheist prayer, because remember Mumia went for the breakfast this year.
Yeah, I remember.
Last
Yeah,
year.
I saw him. I remember that. I remember.
Mumia is going to make it very difficult for us to argue about separation of church and state. We don't bring my religions into state functions, but now if he goes there, how can he?
Then he wants to be president.
He's delusional, that guy. He's delusional, or he's looking. He's looking for a new way of making money.
Of course.
Yeah, he'll get a different set of sponsors that one. Anyway, okay, thank you, Tehuti, for that contribution, and Moriki for the question. Lucha Veleli, you're next.
Thank you very much, Dorcas. Apparently, I would like to agree with what you said about Islam coming much later and trying to correct the wrongs, or where Christianity went wrong, they like tried to do a correction, and it's like a failsafe, and then repackage the whole thing and then tell the future believers that what, this is not like Christianity. This is better. It's actually out for you. But what I'd say, it's like a clapback. I'd say that in as much as Islam tried to do that, it failed at one aspect. It hasn't been reformed. There hasn't been any major reformation ever since it was conceived. That's why we still have those, I can say, as a humanist, I would say there are some injurious or harmful practices that they propagate. For instance, the issue about equity and rights. And we know how, yes, it's actually a fact that the men actually get everything and the women do not get it, apparently. It's like a patriarchal religion. When you look at Christianity, it has reformed several times. We had a time where they used to purge women, they used to burn women at the stake for being different, for being teachers, for being smart, for doing math. And under the grounds of, they are actually whispering to Satan, or Satan is whispering knowledge into their ears. So they used to ban women. But all in all, it reformed. In as much as that was actually rampant during the Dark Ages, but it reformed. Though yes, we might have some sects that still have those backwards practices, but for the mainstream Christianity, it actually tried to reform, and the Reformation didn't even stop right there. I'm actually impressed that right now we actually have gay Christians in church, in some churches. It's still part of this reformation. Just as I've said, you see, religion is supposed to, accommodate the needs of the society that practices it. So if a society has gay people, has LGBTQ folk, it's actually the church that should bend and actually accommodate them, not the other way around. So that's why in the US, mostly, even I saw in Japan, they actually had gay weddings and they are Christian, they are church Christians. So it's part of the evolution. The good thing about Christianity, it's ever reforming. In as much as we know it's not sincere because they are out for the funds, the money, the sadaka, and all that. But yes, if I compare that with Islam, you see, Islam hasn't really reformed much. If anything, what Islam actually did, it actually purged their civilization time back. There was a time where they banned most of the works of their well-known scholars, whether it's algebra, optics. You see, Arabian scholars were actually at par with the Western scholars. They actually cracked optics, and arguably, some say that they had actually cracked evolution even years before Charles Darwin. They actually had what genes mean. They actually had a meaning of what genes, the biological genes, so what they mean and what the implications. However, they lost all that knowledge because of the Muslim Reformation. Um, Once Saudi Arabia turned to Islam, they burnt all those books under the pretense of they are the work of the devil. So you can imagine the whole world right now, we ban all the scientific progress and quote saying that it's the work of the devil. So we all go back to the religious books. That's what Islam did. And that's a sad bit. I would say it's a sad state. It's not as good as Christian, in as much as I'm atheist. Christianity is trying to reform. It's still getting there, but you're not there yet. So it will be actually better if Islam tried to reform. That's why we would be having these Islamic states, for example, in Iran, in Pakistan, in Afghanistan, that try and infringe on the rights of women just because they're women. So we have these men who haven't gone to school; they only know the Quran. They tell the women to drop out of the universities because it's haram. It's all bullshit because they haven't reformed. So yeah, that's what I'd say about it. But the discussion has been great, great moderation. Yeah, thank you very much.
Dorcas, can I add to what Lucheveli said?
Okay, just a minute. I needed to respond to him. Yes, thank you as well, Lucheveli, for all of that historical knowledge that you shared with us throughout. And that aspect of reformation, I think it is the secret to making a religion relevant, and the fact that Islam has resisted reformation and is in fact retrogressing is such a black mark on them. They started off well with the need to correct the mistakes in Christianity, but now they've taken us even back. They're holding the progress of humanity back. So yeah, thank you for those remarks and for your entire contribution today. Yes, Jehuti, go ahead.
Okay. First, Christianity and Islam let me ask, like, do Muslims pay tithes? Wanatoa hiyo puzi inaitwaje hiyo yenye watu toa kwa kanisa?
Sadaka.
Sadaka, sadaka. Waislamu toa sadaka?
Yes, they do contribute, but it's not a type. It's not a type the way Christians do it, but yes, they do contribute.
Oh, so I'm asking that to because I wanted to say that the churches are mostly sponsored by the people. So anyway, since mmesema watu contribute, I want to go back to how the church started. It was a political thing. That's why they will always conform to what's going on in society, because they will always need that support. They can't like stay firm on something, because the Christian world is very different from the Muslim world. I think the Muslim world, there's a lot of dictatorship. Like you can't really do a lot of things. But now the first church was, of course, the Catholic Church. And the Pope is, of course, ndo kusema, ndo Papa. And I remember the late Pope was lenient with this community, LGBTQ, even the Church of England. The church, Christians always bend rules, like from forever. Christians are hypocrites. That's the difference. And I think even Muslims, of course, they act like they're the most perfect religion. And actually, in my opinion, it's the worst created religion. The worst religion man ever came up. The very Sharia law 2000 years later. Christians try to, because they need, Islam, it never seems to be about money, but Christians, it's always about money. It's very, they make it about money. So they don't give a fuck. They don't stand on what they preach. They can bend. Ni malaya, Anyway. Thank you.
Kuna some curse words umeangusha some bombs.
I'm sorry.
But we get your point, and this is the overall challenge with religion in general. No matter how quote unquote progressive it is, how transformative or transformed it is, not transformed but reformed, no matter how reformed it is, it will always trail behind the trajectory of human progress. It will have to be kicked and pushed into the modern age, but it will always tend to resist. So if it is women's rights, the Christians resisted it until most of the developed world leaned towards that direction, and it realized in order to survive, let us play ball. But they never still relinquish everything, because we still have faith, we still have Christian faith that deny women leadership opportunities, with the Catholic Church being at the head of it. We still do not have even one female priest in the Catholic faith. So they can be progressive, but they still limit human progress. That is the basis of it, and they usually just look out for their own interests. And anything that is political is always to be treated with suspicion, because you
Have
never
you
know
ever
how they
watched
can.
the Borgias?
The what?
The Borgias. As a
The
TV show.
bourgeoisie?
The Borgias, a TV
No.
show.
Mm.
Like it explains how the whole religion is all about power. So it has nothing to do, like it's the biggest lie ever told.
Okay. You're saying it's called what? The show?
The
Spell
Borgias,
it.
it's family. The Borgias, Borgias.
Okay. Borgia. I'll look for it.
It's about Pope Alexander
I
and how he
see.
manipulated every king.
Okay.
And
I'll check it out. I'll check it out. But
I think it's very important that people know their history. You know, what I've realized is people don't know history. That's why they believe everything they're told from birth. They don't take the time to ask questions like why is this way? Why am I going to church? Like they don't take time to now they say those who don't know where they came from will never know where they're going. That's why I believe, and when I meet people nowadays who are still like into religion, and we're living in the age of information where you can get everything like in a minute. Because back in the day, you had to go to the library. So I understand, and the people from the past, like the people came before us, I'll forgive them for their ignorance. But what was I?
Yeah, there's no excuse. There's no
Yeah,
excuse indeed.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so
yeah,
much.
thank you.
Great. Let's hear from some silent followers. Ndeve, umetutupa, your absence has been conspicuous. What did you think about today's discussion, Christians and Muslims? Do they worship the same God? Are you there, Ndeve? Oops. Perhaps she has fallen asleep. Okay,
Yeah,
I know
she left.
she's here only by name. Okay, Juliana, any closing remarks?
Well, I missed most of the discussion today, which is really unfortunate. I was busy working and it got called into meetings, so I couldn't work and listen. But from what I have heard, I think I missed a very interesting and informative topic. And yeah, so I think I will be listening to the to the YouTube after this to get most of what the discussion was. But I think it was really good just based on the little bit that I got to hear this evening. This evening. Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes, I didn't expect it to go the way it did. I am glad people had something to say, even those who had initially said they wanted to be silent followers, like Black Messiah Clinton. He managed to chip in a bit. There was Brian Nuhia who also said something, and then ex-Pastor Stano who joined us slightly later. I was a bit worried about our live stream, but at least he was able to join us and he gave us his perspective on the Christian doctrines and maybe some of the differences. Thank you, ex-Pastor. Thank you, Murioki, for your questions and your contribution. Thank you, Tehuti. Yes, you did come in late, but at least you said something.
And I have a question.
Oh dear, imagine we are out of time. Imagine we are out of
Like I want to ask, is this an official meeting ama inakuwa casual? Because maybe I was vulgar.
Well, you could call it an official meeting because the material is on YouTube and it's there permanently. But it was one or two bombs, not throughout. So I think those can be forgiven. And it's
So
not like we are monetized yet.
My French is okay.
Yeah, we will just bury that one. I'm sure even most people, by the time we reach the end of the recording, they have checked out mentally, so they might not even watch the whole thing. It's okay, but in the future, we need to be careful of our language. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So of your French. Yes, speaking of different people, I'm glad we had Edibles who joined us. It's called the Cookie. In the Zoom meeting, he joined us. That was good. He was a silent observer. I saw Steady at some point joining us. And of course, Neve, who has fallen asleep. I think Manuel?
William, South Africa.
Bolelang. But Bolelang only joins when he's moderating, unfortunately. He doesn't come when it's not his turn because he's a very, very busy man.
But he's part of a community.
Oh yes,
yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's that. And most importantly, Luceveleli, I'm so glad. By the way, before Luceveleli, I remember there was Chilwell. Chilwell gave some very important contributions to the discussion. He just had to log off early. And he even gave us a ChatGPT excerpt. So thank you, Chilwell. And last but not least is Luceveleli. I'm so happy that you could join us for Muslim topics. I find that Luceveleli is very knowledgeable on the Islamic faith, because I was worried, will I be the only one who will contribute about the Muslims? So I'm glad Eugene was here. He gave us a historical breakdown of it, and everything was quite in order. So thank you very much. We have 45 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
How long has this been running?
From 10:40, around 10:45.
You guys had talked for 2 hours.
Yeah, you got the tail end of the discussion.
Were there more people?
Yes. See, you haven't heard me mentioning them. Chilwe, Black Messiah, Steady. There were several ex-pastors. No, there were several other people.
The next meetup?
Physical. Okay, well, I announced it. You were not here. It's on 8th. Next, the other Sunday, not this one, the other Sunday, we are doing a video shoot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're coming?
Location?
Yeah. Location is not yet defined. We have to scout around, but
Okay,
we'll tell you by Tuesday, Wednesday.
Itakuwa rada.
Okay.
Lisa.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
rada.
Okay.
Sawa, guys. I wish you a lovely night, a lovely morning wherever you are in the world.